Hey everyone, happy Friday. Hope all is well. Today on the Fireside podcast, we are joined by Courtney Provan from the Canadian Raceboat Hall of Fame. Courtney, thank you so much for hopping on the podcast. I really appreciate it and look forward to learning a lot about raceboats.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me to come and talk about them.
Perfect. So I guess first things first, people are obviously picturing a raceboat and what a raceboat looks like. Are there any qualifications? I know we spoke offline about this a little bit, but when it comes down to raceboats as a whole, what is a raceboat? And I guess how would you describe that to somebody who's rather new to, I guess, the category?
Well, most people, when they think of race boats, you think of some of the classic older wooden boats or maybe the F1 race boats going now. But really, anything can be a race boat. You just make it float in the water and then race each other. And our museum kind of has designs to showcase all of those types of race boats. We've been focusing right now on powered boats, boats with motors and that, but we hope to show racing canoes and sailboats and even bathtubs down the line and bathtub races, that floats in the water and you can make it go and put a race on it. So,
That's a very good point because, yeah, like for myself, even when I'm thinking about a raceboat, I'm thinking about something with a motor and something very sleek, like almost like a cigar boat, right? But you bring up the canoe piece, and as somebody who has a background with like war canoes and stuff like that, that's also a boat that goes relatively fast. So, no, that's amazing. That's amazing. Um, so I'm guessing you grew up around boats and on the lakes and all that kind of stuff.
I grew up in Muskoka, but not so much in boats. My family had a cottage on Lake Simcoe, and we used a boat to get around. But I don't come from a boating background. I came into this more on the museum side of things and understanding care of collections and documentation and how to put together an exhibit. So
Yeah.
I was brought on from that. And I did know I had worked in previous museums in Muskoka, the Muskoka Lakes Museum for one, and they did have exhibits about some of the local Muskoka boat builders. So I do have that knowledge because the Muskoka boat builders are some of the foremost boat builders of wooden boats and that through the world. So I knew that getting into it and then taking some little knowledge and then learning about Canada's racing history and the racing boats and even how Muskoka boat builders built race boats. It's been a learning curve for me, but I love the community has been really welcoming. They've been great with sharing information. I mean, there's some people that will talk about boats for hours, so I get to learn so much and it's such a great family community. They're all like connected and know everybody and then they'll say, "Oh, you can talk to this guy and get you into them." So it's been great.
Perfect. When I love that because I experienced the same thing. I went to the Toronto Boat Show this year for the first time, and I was drawn in by the massive engineering effort that is the indoor lake. And I was like, I need to see how this looks. But there was no shortage of people that were excited and eager to share the sport and the hobby with me, including the community you're talking about, which is the wooden boat builders and stuff. Like it really seems like people are eager to share their knowledge. And really when it comes down to like a specialized skill, like building out a race boat or building out a wooden boat in general, that's not an easy task, but having the right community behind you really gives you the confidence to get into this as like a net new individual like myself. That's really neat. So growing up using boats for more of a functional purpose, less of a racing purpose, how would you describe if someone's going to the Raceboat Hall of Fame for the first time, could you kind of walk through like the exhibits maybe and like how you curated those exhibits and I guess the changes? I know there was a focus on women in racing, I believe, in 2025. But like, just to learn more about like what to expect when somebody goes to the museum for the first time.
Yeah, well, one of the best things about our museum and about the racing community is that there are so many stories to tell. And like I said, anything can kind of become a race boat. So the way that we've built the museum is most of the boats are on loan to us. We have so many wonderful people in the community that want to share their boats with us. So we've agreed to take it in for a season in the summer. Most of them will have more than one boat, so they're not without a boat, luckily, for the whole season and they're very eager to share. So this year we had the Women in Racing exhibit as well as Fast Glass, which talked about the evolution of fiberglass race boats. Most original boats, were the wooden boats. And as beautiful as they are, they're a little expensive to build and maintain. But fiberglass coming out in the 70s opened up racing to the masses. You could buy a more affordable, cheaper fiberglass boat stick any motor on it. And then it became a race boat and get your buddies together. They also have the nice, easy fiberglass checkmate and, throw different engines on it and see how fast you can go. And that's kind of opened up with the hydroplane, smaller racing, and sea fleas. I mean, we get so many people in that see a sea flea that we have on display, which is a small wooden boat that everybody got started with. And everyone's like, I remember building that with my dad in the 50s. So it's a really connected community. So you come in and you don't really know that you have a connection, and you see these sea fleas and the checkmate, and then get into it and be like, you're all of a sudden welcome in the community because, you were a racer. You did that back when you were younger.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I guess that, like, reigniting of that passion when, like, you rediscover, like you said, like, this, like, smaller kit build that you did when you were in your, adolescent teenage years, and how that translates into, like, it's almost like a go-karting to F1 appreciation where
Yeah.
you did it when you were younger, but then now you're, taking it to a different level through a different lens. That's really interesting. And yeah, no, I guess when it comes down to materials and material changes and different things like fiberglass, yeah, there has to be even, going into 2026, there's got to be new and innovations that are coming to market when it comes down to performance within engines and material types and stuff like that. It's got to keep this, keep everything on the inside or on the to the next best innovation, which is really cool. What year did the Canadian Raceboat Hall of Fame first come to be? And I guess what was kind of the uh, was this a smaller curated selection at the beginning that's kind of evolved over the years, or did how did everything kind of
So
time lapse?
it all kind of started with our most famous pinnacle boat being Miss Super Test 3, which is an extremely well-known Canadian race boat. It was an undefeated Harmsworth champion, which is the Harmsworth Trophy was an internationally recognized trophy, Canada competing against the US and British boats competing against the other countries. And Canada raced in the Harmsworth Trophy with Miss Super Test, defeated winner in 1959, 1960, and 1961. And a lot of people, when they first come in, don't really realize how big Miss Super Test is. She had a Rolls-Royce Griffin airplane engine as her engine and raced at 295 kilometers an hour was the top recorded speed, but that was apparently only going 3/4 throttle. It never went full throttle because it would run out of lake beforehand. But we have videos of it racing in the 1960 Harmsworth Trophy race, and it left the Americans in the dust. They added a little rear view mirror so that the driver, Bob Hayward, could see how far behind everybody else was as a cheeky thing. So
Wow.
we kind of have that shown, and we get so many people that come in and remember seeing Super Test in Picton or in London and racing on different places. And I've had a gentleman who told me about how when he was 12, he remembers being at a race and being asked to help towel dry off Miss Super Test at the end of the race. And a lot of people come in and are really connected. Miss Super Test used to be on display at the Ontario Science Centre back in the early 2000s. And as the Science Centre was revamping some of their displays, they told the owner, Jim Thompson, who designed and built Super Test, that they no longer had a space for it. They were revamping things, so they didn't have a place for it. So he would have to, take it back. And he had originally found a buyer for it that was out of the States in the US. So this guy was going to buy Miss Super Test and then take it back to his home somewhere in the States. And when our main founder, Murray Walker, heard about that, he didn't want more of Canada's race boats to go to private collectors to not be shared by Canadians,
Mm,
because Canada is really humble when celebrating its achievements. But this domination of Miss Super Test is a, a strength of Canadian engineering and achievement and racing. So he stepped in and purchased it out from under this American collector and then needed a place to show it off. So I think that was in, I want to say 2010, 2012. And that kind of spearheaded the building of the Canadian Raceboat Hall of Fame, that they looked for the best place for it, was decided Muskoka was a good place to have it. there was land available, and the Muskoka boat builders had built Raceboat, so it was connected, had connections to racing in Muskoka. And then they spent time, getting building permits and everything like that. Doesn't go as fast as everyone would like and think. And so we then opened our doors to the public for the first time just 2 years ago in July of 2024, welcoming everyone to see Miss Super Test and see all of our other displays.
That's fantastic. Well, thanks for sharing that story because, yeah, like collections like these don't just come together and they require immense planning and understanding different areas where, maybe you've got representation with a certain type of boat, but then you're looking to bring in a new collection. And yeah, it feels almost like an art gallery where you've got these private pieces that are owned by individuals that, share them with the world, which is a really amazing thing. And there's no shortage of really kind people that have amazing boat collections in Muskoka that are probably very open to that. So that's awesome. So it sounds like Miss Super Test, that's like the crown jewel of the Canadian Raceboat Hall of Fame, and like the boat that really stops everyone in their tracks. And really, that's such a cool thing. Like, I'm just trying to think back. As a student of the early 2000s and going to the science center, it does sound very familiar, which that's cool that something just sticks with you for that long. How would you like, I haven't been to a powerboat race before. I used to canoe a lot, so I'm very familiar with the regattas and C1, C2, war canoe, stuff like that. But when it comes down to the format of a powerboat race, how many people would be in it? Is it like, are there typical lengths to these things, like the format?
Yeah, so usually what happens is there will be a course set out, and it's usually similar to like a car race in like an oval, and there's buoys and official like referees in boats kind of monitoring it. So there can be up to usually around like 5 to 10 people in each class. And so you get out on your boat and you have to get what's called on plane. So you have to kind of get up to speed and everything. And then a countdown kind of starts. So you have to manage to get your boat across the start line after the countdown, but like as close to that
Okay.
green light as possible. Because if you go over ahead of time, you'll be disqualified in that, but you don't want to leave it too late because then you'll be at a disadvantage in the back of the pack. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of like, it's a lot of technical. So it doesn't go from like a standing start, you got to get up going, and it's a bit faster than the canoes. So,
I'd say, yeah.
and there's always, someone gets out there and then their engine dies and then they're like kind of stranded and stuff.
Yeah. Well, in order really kind of because I went to PEI over the summer, and they have a lot of horse racing out there, and they basically utilize these moving gates to get all the horses up to the same speed and then continue on. But yeah, no, like that whole having everybody in the right area of, I guess, the pack or whatever you want to call it, the group. Yeah, there's so many different components of that, including mechanical failure that you just highlighted, where everything goes to plan. However, something else has a different plan.
Yeah.
That's really neat. And how many people typically would be like in a race? Is it like one on one, or would there be
It's
like,
it's usually a crew, like a group of like 5 to 10 people,
yeah,
depending on the class. Most commonly with the boats, like the most common kind of outboard races are the small wooden hydroplanes, and you can put a different engine on them to enter into different classes. The different engines have like a max horsepower of like 30 or 40 or 50. So you can have the same kind of wooden boat format that you're just changing up the engine. So most of the time there's usually like, say you're racing probably around against 7 people on average
yeah,
that would be in this course. And most of the time, like you're fairly lucky, but every once in a while you'll get too close to someone or take a corner too sharp and fall out. And so there's a bit of safety. So everybody has to wear like Kevlar. Their race suits have to be made of Kevlar so that the propeller doesn't amputate a leg. It can
very
still
good
cut you,
point.
but you're gonna
Yeah,
keep your leg parts together.
yeah. Wow, that's not something I considered or thought of. But,
No, it can
you're
be.
yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, and, similarly to other sports where maybe you're not within, like, the confines of, if it's a racing car and more of like a motorcycle feel to it, yeah, there's a lot of, I guess, protective equipment that needs to be incorporated into the sport as well. Yeah, that's, yeah, I never silly perspective, but I just never thought about the propeller.
Yeah, it's you
Yeah,
don't, you
yeah,
go out there and you see, and they they're going quite fast and everything. And then when a boat flips, you just kind of fly out. Like
Yeah.
it's so you're, worried about hitting the water at 60 miles, 60 knots an hour and can be quite dangerous, but hopefully everything goes according to plan. Everybody's wearing life jackets and they've got their helmets and Kevlar and
Yep. Well prepared for the potentials. But that's good.
yes.
Oh, wow, 60 knots. Now, I'm just trying to do the conversion, and I don't know the conversion, but what would
Oh,
that
I don't.
translate to? Maybe over 100? Maybe in that neck of the woods? Yeah, I'm not
I th
sure.
I think it can be. I think it's I don't know the knots, like,
Yeah.
to miles to
Yeah, I was just
kilometers
sorry.
because I hear numbers thrown at me all the time, and I'm not that good at math, but, like, just knowing that, Miss Supertest can go 295 kilometers an hour, which is
Wow,
185 miles per hour.
that's incredible. Yeah. No, like you said in the beginning of our conversation, it's like you'd almost run out of lake. Like
Yeah,
that's you blink. Yeah, that's crazy. And when you've been with the organization for some time, has there been like, I guess, a piece that's come into like, and it sounds like Miss Super Test is that piece, but that like you've come across a story from your archives that's like, although you're talking about race boating, it's like something that's genuinely moved you or surprised you with the community or with like the history of one of the race boats.
yeah, we did get a boat last year that has a very powerful story with it. And that boat is called Ariel 5, and it was raced by a man named Bill Braden, who was one of the original drivers of Miss Super Test 1. Racing is all a family and they're all connected, and he is the grandson of Harry Greening, who raced in the 1920s and built well-known wooden race boats, the Rainbow series of boats, and he raced in a race in Huntsville on Ferry Lake in 1958 and was for the Duke of York trophy. So another similar, we have a Canadian representative team and an American representative team, and whoever wins this prestigious Duke of York trophy. And it was one of the few times that the Duke of York trophy had been raced in North America. It's usually in the United Kingdom. And Bill Braden was representing Canada in Ariel 5 with his friend Art Asbury, is another well-known boat racer in a boat called Miss Muskoka. And one of the American racers had a problem, and Bill lent his spare propeller to the American racer. And the course, instead of being kind of an oval, it was a weird triangle, and the water was quite choppy. And so coming up on the sharp triangle turn, the American boat ran over top of Bill and it killed him at the race. And Bill's 5 children were there, his youngest son being 3 years old at the time. His name was Mike. So he didn't really know his dad. And Mike Braden, now is an adult, came upon a box of his dad's newspaper clippings and scrapbooks from when he raced in Miss Super Test and racing Ariel 5 and everything about it. Because when his father died, they kind of got rid of the boat and everything else. So he started really looking into his dad's racing history because as a kid, he didn't really know him. This was his way of reconnecting with his dad. And he went to a boat race in Florida and met one of our co-founders, Jamie Smith, who introduced him to people who said, I know where your dad's boat is. And eventually Mike got in touch with the owner of Ariel 5 and called up his older brother, Bill Jr., who was 10 at the time of his dad's passing, saying, I found the boat. The owner was putting it up for sale. So Bill Jr. told his brother Mike to buy it. No question, like
Mhm.
name the price, buy the boat.
Yeah.
And they brought it back over to Canada and had a gentleman out of near Belleville area has been restoring it, and we unveiled it last year in September. And to me, that's just such a powerful story. There's so much connection there with Mike reconnecting with his father that he didn't really know, exploring that kind of history, having this giant scrapbook box of all this stuff with super test information and Bill's racing super test from the beginning and his connections with his friend Art Asbury, who is a well-known racer. And our goal is to maybe kind of get Ariel 5 back in the water, contact Art Asbury's nephew, Chuck Boothby, who we've has shown boats with us before and will maybe do another race to honor that memory. So that, like, just all the happenstance around it, all the connections of reaching out and Mike connecting with Jamie Smith, who connected him with somebody at another race, and then finding and being able to restore this boat is just one of the most powerful stories.
It's incredible. And really, that speaks to the type of community that we touched on earlier, which is it's a tight knit community and people are willing to help and to extend that. And that's that I cannot imagine like being in that situation and thinking something's lost like that and then like rediscovering it. That's incredible. No, thank you so much
Yeah.
for sharing that. That's a really neat story that you don't get to hear all the time, especially when it comes to things like, family heirlooms that, were at one point lost. Wow, wow. That's really
Yeah, I think it's one of the most powerful stories that we have, and, it really speaks to the community and the heritage and everybody, like, cooperating and working together and then
yeah.
being friends and sharing and helping.
Yeah, like, and yeah, exactly. Like even just that lesson where, lending someone a propeller from the opposite team. Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, right,
that's
like, you
the
wouldn't
ultimate
think
in
anything
sports.
of it.
Yeah. That's sportsmanship. That's really cool. Well, thanks for sharing that. That was a nice a very nice story to hear. Um, when it comes down to, I guess you curate different exhibits, and in 2025 you had an exhibit called Women in Racing. I guess from that exhibit there, is there one name from that story or a couple names from that story that you would like more Canadians to know, or you think more Canadians should know, or from different exhibits in the past?
With the women in racing, the one thing that we really wanted to show with that is that boat racing has always been inclusive. They've never divided up the classes. So women have always competed against men side by side since the beginning of racing. And we also wanted to share the stories of women behind the scenes, because maybe you're not just in the driver's seat, but there are also women referees and women mechanics. And one of the more famous women connected to that story is Lorna Reed Wilson. So Harold Wilson was a good, well-known boat racer in the 30s and 40s, and he built what was called the Miss Canada series of boats. Miss Canada 3 winning the President's Cup, defeating the Americans, and is the very first boat that won an international race. But what people don't really know is that Harold was just the driver. Lorna was the mechanic the whole time. And the reason that he started dating her was because she was competent behind the machine and would go in, and she was the one to fix the boat and to go and tweak the engine and clean it all out, whereas he got to, sit back and just do it. So it's always been that kind of women cooperating and just as capable as the men. We had beautiful purpley pink boat on display that is Tammy Wolf's boat, and she is one of our board members, but she did a race called 24 Hours in Rouen, France, and it was a 24-hour relay. She was with a team of 3 other female international boat drivers that would change off, and they came in second in 24 hours in Rouen, France, so racing. So there's just so many, like, everybody is welcome to race.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's, like, again, it's such a wonderful welcoming community,
Oh, for sure. And I've heard of a power couple before, but I haven't heard of a power boat couple before.
right?
That's really cool. And like having like a sport that's so inclusive is such a wonderful thing because, there's so many different perspectives that can be included. And from driving to operating I guess more of the mechanic side of things, different opinions and different viewpoints and stuff like that are what, make a team powerful and valuable. That's really cool to hear. That's really cool to hear. As we go into, I guess, come May, you're open 7 days a week. So when it comes into this next upcoming season, are there any things that you're really excited about when it comes down to boats or I guess topics that you're going to be covering and stuff like that or events? Because it looks like there's a lot of really exciting stuff that happens at the space. And like what a cool place to get married. But is there anything that you're really looking forward to?
This season, I'm really excited about. We're we are going to have some interactive displays. I think we're getting 4 different units that are going to have touch screens and tell some stories tell more of the history of the boats. One of the things with us changing up our exhibits every year is we don't want to lose what we've shown in the past.
Hmm.
So a way for us to continue that is with this interactive exhibit that will be fully touchscreen. There will be some audio stations, and it's going to be completely bilingual. And we're also going to have braille displays this year. So we're going to be the first museum in Muskoka that will have bilingual displays and braille displays. So again, to welcome everybody and share and welcome everyone, because we want to, tell a national story. We want to represent Canada, and in order to represent Canada, we need to be bilingual, we need to be inclusive, so we want to make sure that everyone is welcome to come and see.
Yeah, and that really ties into, like, I think everything that we've talked about so far, which is, race boats and that community being, a welcoming spot for everyone and bringing everyone all together to celebrate race boats, but also Canada's rich cultural heritage with race boats from across of a bunch of different, categories, I guess you'd say, from canoes to Miss Super Test, which goes a little bit faster than a canoe. Perfect. Well, if anyone's inspired by this conversation, what would be the best step for, I guess, people to visit, donate, learn more? How do they get in touch?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, which is canadianraceboats.com. There's a lot of information on there. We'll be building it out this year to show some of the past exhibits online. And it has all of our information about when we're open, our admission prices, highlighting some things. And there's obviously a contact us form. So if, somebody has a boat that they may want to give us for a season to share, or has some kind of memorabilia like something about Miss Super Test or old racing programs, right? We're trying to collect a lot of that kind of older things, and boat plans and any photos that you have or videos that you have of old racing. So you can reach out to us via our website and get in touch, and we'll give you a call and talk to you about what you've got.
Perfect. And you know what? I think this is a very seasonal time for that as spring cleaning is upon us. And you
Yes.
might come across that box in the basement that you go, oh, what's this? And it's exactly what you just described. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on, Courtney. I really do appreciate it. And I've learned a ton about Canadian race boats and the rich heritage that we have here in this country. But yeah, thank you so much and have yourself a fantastic weekend.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me, Sean. This was great.
Perfect. All right. Take care now. Bye.
Okay, bye.